You know, some stories, they just feel like they're pulled straight out of a myth. The story of Srinivasa Ramanujan is one of those. We're talking about a man whose mind worked on a completely different plane, cooking up formulas that were so advanced, so otherworldly, that 100 years later, we're still trying to figure them all out. So let's get into it.
So, our story kicks off, believe it or not, in Cambridge, England. The year is 1913. A letter lands on the desk of G.H. Hardy, who's basically a rock star in the world of mathematics. It's from Madras, India, and it's weird. 9 pages of crumpled paper, just packed with these bizarre-looking theorems and equations that, at first glance, look totally impossible.
And get this, the letter is from a 26-year-old clerk. No fancy university degree, no formal training. So you can imagine what Hardy's thinking, right? How could someone so far outside the system, someone totally unknown, be producing work like this? It's got to be a prank, right? Unless it was.
Hardy and his colleague John Littlewood, they spend hours that night just going through this letter. And by the time the sun came up, their skepticism had completely vanished. It was replaced by just pure awe. Hardy later said this, which is just an incredible thing for a mathematician to say. The formulas were so original, so beautiful, they just had to be true. This wasn't a hoax. This was the work of a genius.
So, who were these two men suddenly connected by this single mind-blowing letter? Well, to say their worlds were different would be a massive understatement.
I mean, just look at this comparison. It's insane. On one side, you have Ramanujan, a poor clerk, deeply religious, a guy whose genius was basically pure intuition. And on the other, you have Hardy, a Cambridge professor, a committed atheist, and a man who believed that without a rigorous step-by-step proof, math was basically meaningless. They were polar opposites, a complete clash of cultures, mindsets, and worlds. To really understand the mind that came up with those formulas, we have to rewind the clock a bit and go back to Ramanujan's childhood in South India. Ramanujan was born into a high-caste Brahmin family, which sounds prestigious, but they were actually quite poor. And from day one, he just didn't fit in. He hated the rigid, rote memorization of school. His mind just worked differently. There's a famous story where his teacher said, "Any number divided by itself is 1. And young Ramanujan immediately pipes up, "But what about 0 divided by 0? Is that 1 too?" He wasn't being a wise guy. His brain was just wired to go deep. And this is the part that is so crucial to understanding him. For Ramanujan, math wasn't just a bunch of symbols on a page. It was spiritual. It was divine. He was a devout Hindu who truly believed that his family goddess, Namagiri, was feeding him these formulas in his dreams. His work, in his own mind, was a direct message from God. But this laser focus, well, it came at a huge cost. When he got to college, he ignored every single subject that wasn't math. While everyone else was studying history or English, he was just off in his own world scribbling away. So, of course, he failed his exams, lost his scholarship, and had to drop out. It was a crushing blow. But that letter to Hardy, it changed everything. It was a lifeline. Hardy knew, he just knew he had to get this guy to Cambridge. This set the stage for one of the most remarkable and unlikely collaborations in the history of science. There was a huge problem, though. As a strict Brahmin, it was a major religious taboo for Ramanujan to cross the ocean. It meant being shunned by his entire community. The only reason he went was because his mother had an incredibly vivid dream where the goddess Namagiri herself appeared and told her, "Do not stand in your son's way." And this quote from Hardy, it really tells you everything about their relationship in Cambridge. Hardy was trying to teach Ramanujan the formal, Western way of proving theorems. But he pretty quickly realized that he was the one getting the real education. The student was in so many ways the master. Okay, so this next story is probably the most famous one about Ramanujan, and it just perfectly captures his insane intuition. Hardy goes to visit Ramanujan, who's sick in the hospital. And, just to make some small talk, Hardy says the number of the taxi he took, 1729, was pretty boring. Ramanujan's response was just immediate. "No, Hardy," he shot back. "It is a very interesting number." And then, just off the top of his head, with no paper, no calculation, he explains that 1729 is the smallest number that can be expressed as the sum of 2 cubes in 2 different ways. To him, numbers weren't abstract concepts. They were like his personal friends, and he knew all their secrets. So his time in Cambridge was this incredible period of intellectual achievement. But on a personal level, It was an absolute tragedy. The very place that could understand his genius was also the place that would completely break him. Think about it. He arrives just as World War I breaks out. Cambridge becomes a ghost town. He's totally isolated. He couldn't stand the cold, damp English weather, and the culture shock was immense. Worse, wartime rationing made it almost impossible for him to find the food he needed for his strict vegetarian diet. His health just started to fall apart. I mean, just look at this timeline. It's just staggering. In 1917, he gets diagnosed with some mysterious, incurable disease. The pain and the loneliness get so bad that he throws himself in front of a train. And then, just a few weeks later, while he's still recovering, he gets the news that he's been elected a Fellow of the Royal Society. That's an honor that puts him in the same league as Isaac Newton. The whiplash is just unbelievable. A year after that, frail and exhausted, he finally sailed back to India. But his story and his incredible work were far from over.
Even on his deathbed, his mind was on fire. In the last year of his life, in constant pain, he writes one final letter to Hardy, and in it, he outlines this brand new concept he called Mach theta functions. The ideas were so out there, so advanced, that it took mathematicians decades just to start to understand what he was even talking about.
He died shortly after that, at the age of just 32. 32! He had fundamentally changed mathematics and peeked into the workings of the universe before most people have even started their careers. It's just impossible not to wonder what else he might have accomplished.
And he knew it. His wife later remembered him saying this. Even as he was dying, he understood the value of what he'd done. He told her his name would live for 100 years. Well, he was more than right. His name and his influence just keep growing.
And this is the truly wild part. Those formulas from his notebooks, those thoughts of God, are now being used in fields that didn't even exist back then. We're talking computer science, quantum physics, and even the study of black holes and string theory. It's just mind-blowing.
And that leaves us with one final incredible thought. So much of his work is still unproven, still not fully understood. It just makes you wonder, what other secrets, what other thoughts from a goddess are still locked away in those pages, just waiting for the next genius to come along and figure them out?